everybody, Invisiblekatana here, and today I wanted to talk about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. If you haven't seen the last couple episodes I did, I basically mentioned, with Valve and Rockstar and Xbox, I just wanted to talk about the Turtles, and they were just dropping bombs on us left, right, and center. So I'm finally just getting to talk about the Turtles. And today I wanted to specifically talk about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, of course, being gaming icons. Now, that could be kind of confusing for some people, where it's like, that's not true, they're not gaming icons. And then, there might be people who are, of course, I'm a huge Ninja Turtles fan, so of course I think that. But I think there are a lot of people who might not be the biggest TMNT fans, but even they're like, okay, well, they've been around since, things kind of started all over again as far as like home consoles once the NES came out. So, quick rundown, and then I'll kind of go through some of my experience with it. The Ninja Turtles have been there since, like I said, the NES. They got 3 games on the NES, obviously that's Ninja Turtles 1, 2, and 3. Then on Super Nintendo, they have my personal favorite, which is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 4, Turtles in Time, which is like the quintessential Turtles beat 'em up game that is, constantly referenced and mimicked. And then, after that, you have typically games based on whatever, series was out at the time. So the 2003 series I think they had like 3 or 4 games come out, and they had a really cool sort of cel-shaded art style. Like those games I remember being really fun. Then you had a couple games like here and there, one of which we'll definitely be talking about because that game is made by Platinum, who is doing the new game, The Last Ronin. So I'm super hyped for that, but there's a whole story with that. But Mutants in Manhattan is during that PS3 360 era. And then we actually did have a game that recently came out, like within like the last 4 years, I think it ended up coming out. But there was an arcade game based on the 2012 cartoon. For anyone that never knew that, they made an arcade game, which was actually kind of fun. I remember playing it, and this was probably way after the series ended. I was like, I've literally never heard of this. I found it at an arcade, of course. And then within the last couple of years, it actually ended up being brought over to console. I remember they added it was either like 1 or 2 extra levels to the game, and they brought it out, and it was actually on like PS5, not like PS4, but like it came. Well, I'm sure with cross generation, it was I'm sure it was on there. But I remember thinking like, hey, that's that game I played, which I thought was kind of fun, and they actually ended up bringing it to consoles, which was surprising because that was not only after that series was done, but it was also after Rise of the TMNT had already been canceled, and that was killed off as well. So I was surprised that they put the effort in to do that, because I'm like, this is technically like 2 cartoons old at this point, or 3. I think by the time it actually came out, I think Tales of the TMNT was already out. It was like 3 cartoons ago, and they're like, hey, we're gonna finally put this arcade game on consoles now. But the Turtles have always been there. Like I said, they'll pop up when they have like a cartoon come out. Typically it's a TV show, but they had like the TMNT movie, which was like loosely tied to the 2003 cartoon series, but they were always there. Obviously in the comics they've been on just a pure run for decades, but outside of that, they're still what I would consider gaming icons. Like they are some classic games, which I think the iconic status of them definitely varies from person to person. For me, obviously, Turtles in Time is my favorite Super Nintendo game, period. So I have the soundtrack on vinyl because I really love it that much. I still have my old Super Nintendo copy. I have like a bunch of other random crap that ties to, Turtles in Time, things I've gotten from subscription. Shout out to Loot Crate, remember Loot Crate? But I got like quite a few things from that. They had like one whole box that was basically based on the games. And I even got like the little, obviously if you haven't played Turtles in Time, you won't get this reference. But I got like a little lithographic TV, and the screen is like Shredder, and then it fades to the Statue of Liberty, like from the intro of Turtles in Time. So I thought that was awesome. So I'm a huge Turtles in Time fan in particular. It even got a remake. It's the one out of all the Turtles games that have ever come out, it's the only one that got like an actual remake. Sadly, it was called Turtles in Time Reshelled. People didn't like it. I played like the demo on on 360 back when that came out, but that game crashed and burned and disappeared and got delisted, and it is gone forever. You might be able to find it, internet things and all that, but as far as I'm aware, that game is just gone. I don't know if it was even popular enough for people to think in advance to be like, maybe we should save this and throw it online. Excuse me. But the Turtles have always been, in my personal opinion, very iconic when it comes to gaming. The last couple of years, aside from the arcade game that came out, they've had quite a few games. We've had of course, the footage that you guys are seeing is from Shredder's Revenge. That game came out. That game's absolutely amazing. So if you need a Turtles game, that was the one that came out where it was like, okay, if there was ever a competitor to Turtles in Time, it's this one. Like, it's super fun. The animations are phenomenal. They got a buttload of characters. Usagi Yojimbo's in it. That's always like an extra 200 billion effing points in my personal opinion. For anyone who's unfamiliar with Usagi Yojimbo, he's the samurai rabbit, also an independent comic that was made. And just one day I don't know, somebody talked to somebody, and then ever since then it's just like that special little thing. You watch enough episodes of a Turtles cartoon, at some point they're like, this one's the deep cut, and we just throw it, they go to an alternate dimension or some, Nexus battles, all that good stuff. They run into Usagi and it's like, hey, super cool. So, he wasn't made for that. He's got his own comic series and everything, but that's always been one of like my favorite little crossovers, where it was just like some indie comic creators met up and were just like, hey, we got talking turtles, you got, talking rabbit, he's a samurai, they're ninjas, like the world's just combined perfectly. So it was great to see that. That was probably my hypest update when they did that, where it was like, hey, we're adding new characters and stuff. And it was like, Usagi was awesome. Karai is amazing in that game. Like, she's insane. But Usagi, of course, I was like, it's Usagi. Like, I want to play with him all the time. But we had Shredder's Revenge. We've had Splintered Fate. Like I said, the arcade game being transferred to console. I cannot tell you the name of that game. I do not remember, but if you look it up, I'm sure you will find it. TMNT 2012 arcade game. You should easily find it. But Shredder's Revenge, the arcade game, Splintered Fate, and then there was another game that was actually like a Turtles tactics game, where you go through and you get like your limited number of moves and stuff like that. And I remember that being kind of cool. I played the demo for that and played like a level or two. And I was like, this is actually kind of cool. So there are not only just like a buttload of Ninja Turtle games, but they're in a ton of different styles. We have, the classic ones were the side-scrolling beat 'em up, even from, like I said, the NES up to Super Nintendo, until we got like the PS2 versions of, the Turtles from the 2003 cartoon. It was all side-scrolling games. It was 4 at the time, like I said, 3 of them being on the NES. And that was kind of like the staple. And granted, it was the NES, Super Nintendo era. Like, everything was a side-scrolling game. If we're being totally honest, that was the era we were in. And then eventually, it was like, okay, Turtles in Time is insanely popular. Of course, that was the arcade game. Shout out to what was it, Manhattan Heist, for the weirdos out there. No actual shade. It was like, hey, that wasn't my thing. I had Super Nintendo. I didn't have a Genesis, but it's basically the same game. You can look into all that. That's just kind of how it is. But love those games. The 2003 series comes out. Like, I genuinely believe that got like 4 straight games. Like, it was actually kind of crazy. I remember thinking like, I really wish I could have these. Like, one of the games was the full-on Battle Nexus arc, which is when they go out to space and then it's like a bunch of people from a bunch of places. It's the if you're in the anime, it is the anime shonen tournament arc. Like, legit. The Turtles have their own tournament arc. It is the Battle Nexus, and it's kind of badass because, like, depending on how the series plays out, it could be the introduction to a lot of stuff that's already in the universe. Like, I think for 2003, that was how they introduced the Triceratons, if I'm not mistaken. It's of course been a billion years since I watched that cartoon, but I think that's how they introduced the Triceratons in the 2003 series, was them being in the Battle Nexus. So, there's a lot of cool stuff, from that one. And now we're going into a brand new era, a brand new era for the Turtles in general. Because at this point, The Last Ronin is coming out. It has officially been announced, technically for the second time, because it was supposed to come out. It was supposed to be a thing that was already announced, and then it was like kind of killed off, and then they picked it back up once Paramount ended up doing like their gaming studio, so they've gone to Platinum. And it's a really interesting story, because not only has Platinum already made a Ninja Turtles game, it was actually one of the panned Ninja Turtle games that came out where people were just like, oh, this sucks. So it'll be interesting to see how this turns out, because there are 2 huge factors that are changing with, well, I guess technically it would be 3. One of which is the fact that it's a totally different publishing company, because it's actually Paramount Games. Paramount at this point owns all things Ninja Turtles. Previously it was Activision, so this was like a really interesting era where Platinum Games made 3 licensed product games. It was Ninja Turtles, Transformers Devastation, and then the Legend of Korra game. Transformers Devastation, I still have on my PS4. That game is phenomenal, and I wish it got a sequel, but that game's effing amazing, so definitely check that out. And then the Mutants in Manhattan is the Ninja Turtles game. That actually came out first. That was the first one, because I remember that was like, PS3 era. And that came out first, and I was like, holy crap, it's Platinum. They made Bayonetta. They're the people that made the Nier Automata games, but like their first thing for me was Bayonetta. And I've always loved them, especially even their tenure for people who aren't like super deep into all the news of video games. Platinum Games, some of the people there, like pretty much all the people, were from Capcom, most of which either worked on Resident Evil or Devil May Cry, depending on how you look at it. That's the same thing anyway. But a lot of those people were like Capcom people. Then they made, Bayonetta. I love Bayonetta. That's one of my favorite franchises. Beautiful action game. So I found out they're making a Turtles game. I'm like, this is like one of my favorite developers. They're making a Turtles game. And then when it came out, I never ended up getting it, but everyone said the same thing where it was like, this is not it. It just wasn't what it was meant to be, and that was unfortunate. And I believe Legend of Korra was the second game that didn't even get a physical, and it was like slightly better. It was kind of mixed, and then eventually that got delisted. And then they made Transformers Devastation, and that one, third time's the charm, I guess, because that was God tier. That game is effing amazing. It is a beautiful love letter. If you like G1 Transformers, it is amazing, and you get to pick a bunch of different Transformers and pick your weapons. Like, I love that game. The only thing that game was missing was the ability to play as the Decepticons. You only play as the Autobots, and if they got a sequel, if they even let them go back to that, which might be a little tough, actually it might not be, because Paramount also owns Transformers. I didn't think of that. They wouldn't do Devastation twice. They should, but they probably wouldn't, go back to that anyway. But Transformers Devastation is absolutely phenomenal, and also has an insane rock soundtrack. Like, it's crazy. But love that game. I wish the Turtles game, ended up working out the way it should have, but sadly it just didn't at the time. So Platinum had the Turtles. It didn't really work out, but a lot of the people that were there at that time are not there anymore. So this is like new Platinum, and they've worked on, Ninja Gaiden 4, and that game I've heard is pretty good. So they did their half of it, and then Team Ninja, and things turned out pretty well for them. So new Platinum now has their turn at a Ninja Turtles game, and it's going to be like a full-on AAA budget, I would imagine, because it's for The Last Ronin. It's probably the most popular comic that's come out for the Turtles in like the last 5 years. I forgot exactly when that came out, which if you guys want to look at my old reviews for that, I did a review for every issue of that when it originally came out. I didn't do a single thing for the second one, even though I haven't even read. I bought the full issue when the full series when it came out. Still haven't read that junk. It's just sitting on the bookshelf. But if you want to see my review for the first series of The Last Ronin, you can check that out as well. But I'm excited. I think it's going to still be the AAA thing. It was supposed to be that when it was first announced. I assume that's still going to be the case. So it's going to be the first like full-on AAA like Ninja Turtles game. It won't just be like, hey, it's based on the cartoon and it's kind of like a T for teen, because the game should be mature. That's another thing. I think they're gonna go all out, and it would be crazy if they didn't, because like The Last Ronin, the Turtles in general, they get the rep of being like, oh, it's kiddie and stuff, but like if you read the Turtle comics, it's not fun in games. It's really not. Like, that junk gets serious, and I know a lot of people don't know that, but they could learn. They could definitely learn that from The Last Ronin, the video game. That would be amazing. Plus, they could have a bunch of different characters, because there are flashbacks in that story where all the characters are involved. So they have all the Turtles. They got Casey. They got April. They have some other characters, which, more like deep cut stuff that I won't reference just in case you want to read the comic. But there's like one particular character where I was like, holy crap, I did not think you were going to show up in this. So, they did some good stuff in that comic that I really enjoyed. I would love to see that play out fully in a comic book. And depending on how they do it, they might actually go into the second story where, some stuff happens, after that special run. So that's all up in the air at this point, but it's going to be the first like full-on AAA title that's going to be big budget. It's going to be a full-on action game, done by Platinum Games, new Platinum. So that's a huge difference. And then of course it being, Paramount instead of Activision, and I'm excited to see what they do with it. If they're really going in this hard, like, and the Paramount Games thing was basically announced as a studio like maybe a week or two before, I think it was at Summer Games Fest when we got the Turtles announcement. It was like 2 weeks before that was when the Paramount studio even got announced, like, hey, Paramount Games is a thing now. It's like, okay, like, who cares? And then it's like, oh, Ninja Turtles. Well, now I care a little bit. Depending on what they do, maybe Transformers could have another game. Me personally, I say just make Devastation 2, like just take that last game and just make it even cooler. Let me play as, Soundwave, and, my life is complete. But we'll see what happens. But I wanted to take this opportunity because we're going into the next phase of what the Turtles are, at least, specifically in the gaming realm. And I think this will be that first time. It's definitely the first time in generations, because I don't really know, especially with like those licensed games, all of those were like on a lower budget, even though, like I said, the Transformers one was the last one, so I felt like they put the most into that. But the Turtles games have always been like, all right, well, back in the day, games were much simpler. So they were, at the top tier. It was about as expensive as you could get. It was a Turtles game. So here's 1, 2, and 3. Super Nintendo comes out. Here's 4, Genesis, Manhattan Heist, the full-on arcade version of the game and everything like that. But after that, it was like, okay, most games come out. PS2, you got like a, a fighting game. You can play as the turtles, you run around, you have some fun, nothing crazy. Currently, any Turtles game is a smaller budget game. It's not in the same era like it used to be where everything on the NES was the same budget. Well, that's not fair to say, if I'm being totally honest. But PS2 era, it was like, okay, it might not be the highest budget. It wasn't like God of War style graphics or anything, but it had some great cell shading. It was phenomenal at the time. Everything recently has been side-scrolling stuff, looks phenomenal, but still lower budget. Time might take a little bit longer because they were doing like all those animations, but a bit lower budget. Splinter Fate, you got like a roguelike game, you got like a tactics game, repurposing the arcade game into, consoles. So we haven't had a Turtles game that's been what I imagine is going to be like a multi-million-dollar budget in who knows how long. I'd have to look up the actual numbers for some of the older games, but it's not in the same vein of being like, okay, it's a your regular AAA title that costs $200 million or something insane. We haven't had that before. We probably still won't have like a $200 million Ninja Turtles game. But Platinum Games is not a simple company, and Paramount has all the money in the world. If you have your own streaming service, you got enough money. They got Ninja Turtles money and Transformers. That might sound crazy to say out loud if you aren't into those franchises, but I promise you, the Ninja Turtles have always existed. Just because they don't have the cartoons, the comics are coming out consistently. Transformers, comics, consistently. Like I am telling you, Paramount is making insane money off of both those franchises. They might not be in theaters because that's how it's always seemed. Like if they're not in the movies or on TV, it's like they kind of disappear from most people's frame of view. But the Turtles and the Transformers are nonstop. They have been since they came out. Like they have always been out there in some way, shape, or form. Typically, the comics are the consistent thing, but this could be the first time that we really see them get to a moment where it's like their iconography hits like full-on AAA multi-million-dollar budget for a singular Ninja Turtles game, and I would love to see it. I mean, I hate that games have to cost 100 to 200 to 300 to who knows how much the actual budget for GTA is right now. I don't really like that part in particular, but I love Platinum Games. Even if it's new Platinum, they've done good so far. I love the Ninja Turtles. I think they've been icons in gaming since the beginning, and I don't think you can argue that. And like I said, it's just like the franchise in general where it seems to dip and then it pops up when a new cartoon or movie comes out, but they're always there. They have, some of the most famous references in gaming are, from Ninja Turtles games. You have the most difficult level ever is underwater level for a Turtles game. Like the irony is lost on no one, but that's out there for people that know gaming. Obviously, Turtles in Time is just insanely popular. Their references to Turtles in Time, they made a reference to the Turtles in Time video game in the Batman and Ninja Turtles animated movie, which is amazing. If you've never seen that, God tier film. I'm telling you, that junk was amazing. They should have made a second one because I think they made a second comic. They should have made a second movie, but they even referenced the game, and that movie came out. It's probably been like 7 years. It's been a while since that movie came out, but the game came out on the Super Nintendo. So obviously, to make that a reference to this day shows how popular that game is. Like throwing characters at the screen. They even mimic that in Shredder's Revenge. Like throwing the characters at the screen. That is specifically a Turtles in Time reference. Like that's how popular that is within the Turtles community. So the Turtles have been icons in gaming. They have references out there in tons of different games. They have references in general because it's the Ninja Turtles. But they've always been popular. They probably always will be. It has its peaks and valleys, whether or not there's a cartoon out at the time. And we'll see what happens with the next, the next animated movie. I can't wait to see what they do with that one with the Shredder. But the Turtles have always been gaming icons. I think it's something that doesn't get talked about pretty much ever, which is unfortunate. But the Turtles are 100% gaming icons, and I think we are moving closer towards the path. Like they've been flooding the market recently. Like I think this is the first time we've had so many games at once. And they're all different styles, which is actually pretty awesome as a Turtles fan, because it's like, I could play a roguelike, I could play, an action-adventure game, I could play a side-scrolling beat-em-up, I could do the tactics game. So, it's the first time we've had, like, so many together, but I'm super hyped for this last running game, and I'm very curious if it really solidifies, or maybe it won't solidify, because I feel it's already said and done, like, it's there. It might be a little bit older for most people, especially if you watch, like, the cartoons, like, those are, kind of older memories. But we got, like I said, like 4 or 5 games recently that came out for the Turtles, and they're all pretty good. So they might be on that smaller, close to indie style, AA, but I think this is going to be like the first multi-million-dollar triple budget game. Because I imagine, if Platinum is doing it, I doubt it's going to be cheap. And considering the story, I also doubt it's gonna be cheap. Like, there's a lot of locations, there's all the turtles, there's flashbacks, there's heroes, there's villains. Like, a lot goes on in that comic series. And in all honesty, we just have to wait and see what happens. But I'm excited for it. I'm really looking forward to the last Ronin coming out. But I wanted to do this because I've been thinking about it a lot, because I'm like, man, I cannot wait to play this game and get more footage of it and everything. But then I was thinking, like, there's a lot of turtle games out, like, at this very moment. And also, the turtles have been very iconic in the gaming realm since, like I said, the NES. Like, they're the turtles. So whenever a turtle game comes out, it's going to be huge. But I think it's one of those things where they're like kind of hidden icons. Maybe that's what I was, they're like the hidden icons in gaming. But for me, I don't think there's much of an argument. Like, you could argue it if you aren't a Turtles fan. But once you look at the facts, it's like the Turtles games were insanely popular, hitting up to number 4. And then obviously, we had the break once there was no cartoon. Nobody was watching the next mutation, unless you did something with the Power Rangers Ninja Turtles crossover episode back in, what was that, like in space or Lightspeed? I forgot which one that was, but I remember that being awesome back in the day. But aside from that, it took a minute. Then we had to wait for the 2003 cartoon that got a cool chunk of games. 2012 got like one solid thing, and that was about it. And then Rise of the TMNT, got nothing because they killed it off insanely fast, even though it's an amazing series. And then that's about it. And that's where we are. And now everything else is kind of just, well, here's the Turtles. It is what it is. And people just have like their own stories set in like their own universe, which I think is awesome. So we'll see what happens with this last Ronin game coming up. I am very excited for it. And I think it's going to be amazing, especially because it's platinum. That had me hyped beyond all belief. So we will see what happens. But I wanted to make this video, like I said, just talking about the Ninja Turtles in the gaming realm and how they are icons. It might be ups and downs, like I said, same as when they have a TV show or movie. But I would say the Turtles are gaming icons for sure. But of course, I would love to know your thoughts on that. So definitely put your comments down in the comment section below. If you guys have turtle memories, for sure, share them. I mean, we've gotten characters from, since the beginning, like I said, since NES, through every iteration. They even had representation in the I forgot what was, like the Nickelodeon All-Stars Brawl game. They had a couple of the turtle characters in there, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think they had all of them. I know they started with Mikey, and then it was like they eventually started adding more turtles. But if you guys have memories of the Turtles throughout your time with gaming, definitely let me know. What is like your favorite Ninja Turtles game, whether it's new or old? I mean, for me personally, I'm still sticking with Turtles in Time. But if I had like a real argument, I'm not gonna lie, like Shredder's Revenge is actually really amazing. I would still say, if I could just shift the soundtrack from Turtles in Time over to Shredder's Revenge, then you might have me like 100%. But I really do love Turtles in Time still, and Shredder's Revenge is definitely my number 2, if not realistically speaking, not my number 1 Turtles game. But want to know your thoughts, so please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.